I am the good shepherd. Why does Jesus need to use the adjective good before shepherd? Because at the time of Jesus and even in the Old Testament, not all shepherds were good. Not all shepherds were concerned about their sheep. There were many shepherds, both figuratively, that is, in the way of kings and prophets and leaders of the people, and in the way of actual shepherds, sheep herders who would look after sheep, who would, at the slightest sign of trouble, abandon their sheep. And that's why Jesus begins today's discourse, taken from the Gospel of John chapter 10, verses 11 to 18, by emphatically stating, I am the good shepherd. And then Jesus goes on to talk about what exactly he means when he says that he is the good shepherd. And he says three things about himself as the good shepherd. And the first is this, that the good shepherd knows the sheep, and the sheep know him. Now sometimes some of us might not want to be compared with sheep. We are not being compared with sheep, and we need to understand that. Sheep is only a metaphor for a human person. Sheep is only a metaphor for the universe, because as far as Jesus is concerned, he is a shepherd not only of humans, but he is the shepherd of the entire cosmos. And therefore we need not take offense when we are regarded as sheep. And if you do not like the term sheep, you can substitute it with a human person. I am the good looking after human person, if you like, if you do not like the metaphor of the shepherd. However, as a sheep, someone, Jesus says, he knows every single one of us. In other contexts, he speaks about God's knowledge of us, and God knowing even the hairs on our head are counted. I'm sure God would have a wonderful time to keep track of those who are bald, because that will make God's work less. But the point is that again, a point is being made. God knows us intimately. So when Jesus says, I know my own, he is talking about this intimate knowledge. When the scriptures use the word gnosis, knowledge, to know a person, they very rarely use it in the intellectual sense. They use it in the most intimate of senses. And so therefore, Jesus knows every single one of us in the most intimate sense possible, and he also emphatically states that my own know me. And so I need to ask myself whether I know the Lord. I might know about the Lord. I might know that the Lord was born in Bethlehem. I might know the Synoptic Gospels, and according to the Synoptic Gospels that he had a 3-year ministry. I might know that he died in Jerusalem. I might know that he was crucified on the cross. I might know that he was laid in the tomb, but that does not mean all that I know him. One way of finding out whether I know him is when I relate to him. What name do I use for Jesus? Do I use the same names that others are using? Or is there an intimate relationship that I share with him? Sometimes in families, we do not call people by the name that is given to them or by the name that appears in the baptismal or other registers. We use what is known as a nickname to them to express our fondness, to express our intimacy, to express our love. This is what we need to ask ourselves in our relationship with Jesus, because Jesus has a special relationship with each one of us and relates to us as if we were the only person in the world. The second point that Jesus makes is that he, as good shepherd, is willing to lay down his life for a sheep. This discourse is given in chapter 10 of the Gospel of John. In chapter 19 of the Gospel of John, Jesus will show that in the most tangible manner possible when he spreads his arms on the cross. He means it, not only metaphorically, that he is willing to give of himself, but he means it in the most practical sense of the word. However, it is not as if there was only one act of being crucified on the cross by which Jesus gave his life for the world. No, he continued to do that all through his ministry, all through his life. And this is what Peter says in the Acts of the Apostles, which is our first reading of today, namely, that they were able to do this act of reaching out, that they could heal a person who was lame and blind and deaf, and they could heal all the invalids because Jesus gave them that power, because they were simply imitating Jesus in what Jesus had done, come to make the world whole. He gave his life so that others could have life. He died so that we might live. And he died first to himself. Then he was able very, very easily to die too on the cross. If each one of us can ask ourselves whether we have died to ourselves, it is very unlikely that, like Jesus, we are being called to die on the cross. It is very unlikely that we will be crucified like he was. But it is likely that we are being called every single moment to die to ourselves so that others might live. Am I willing to do that? And finally, in the third part of the discourse, he speaks about the attraction which other shepherds will try to bring. But they are the brigands, they are the robbers. And we need to be aware of the other shepherds which are around, who come only to destroy the sheep, who come only to create disunity, who come only to separate the sheep and not to gather. The sheep have to recognize them. In every country in the world, there are human beings, there are governments, there are institutions which respond in this manner, like the brigands, like the bad shepherds, like the thieves and the robbers. They come to create division. They come to create separation. They come to create a dichotomy, and we must not allow them. Every one of us is living in a world that is multicultural, that is made up of many races, that is made up of many religions, that is made up of many ways of being, and each one of us is called by Jesus to be universal in this respect. We cannot be parochial. We cannot be narrow-minded. We cannot be divided in our approach to others, in our approach to life. And we must be aware of those thieves and brigands and robbers who come in the guise of good shepherds, but whose real intention is to separate and to create disharmony. I need to recognize them and to call them up for who they really are. On my part, I will respond to the calling of the good shepherd who calls me, as the first reading tells us, to create unity, who calls me to make people whole. Will I, as a disciple of Jesus, realize that I am called, even in my own position, to make others whole again? And will I dare to do that